Right. So he's been training for 26 years.
Hmm.
He's now had this vision
Hmm.
in this cave. What? How does he do this? How does he act upon these visions?
So when he first receives the message from Gabriel, he is, of course, in awe, but he's also afraid to sort of tell anybody else
Yeah.
because
There's an
this
angel in front of you.
right. This is a
Yeah.
time. This is a time and place. There's already a very established polytheism in Arabia. There's already many other gods and goddesses in. For example, he's from the Qurayshi tribe, who are the custodians of the city of Mecca, and Mecca has already, long before Islam, has already been a very religious, spiritual city. It
Hmm.
already has a lot of sort of patron gods and goddesses of the city. There's already lots of shrines there to various gods and goddesses, and there's already lots of people making pilgrimages to the city of Mecca, to these various shrines, right? And so he's not too enthusiastic to immediately go start preaching the message of God, because he's afraid of how other people may or may not,
Right. May
be
receive it.
accepting of it. Yes,
Right. They might
how
turn
might
on
they
you.
take it? Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And so he first starts just telling his closest friends and family members. Right, it is generally considered that his wife
Hmm.
was the first person to accept Islam under him. And then you see his closest friend, Abu Bakr, his cousin and son-in-law and good friend, Ali, generally being considered the
Hmm.
next people after him, but after her, sorry. But yeah, only he starts slowly but surely revealing it to those closest to him.
Sure. Sure. Then you start with the family, then you go to the community,
Right.
and then it slowly grows from there. Much like a business.
Sure.
Um, okay, so he starts getting a following, right?
Hmm.
And I imagine they're having their religious meetings, and he is preaching from what? From what? How does he begin? Like, what's his message in the beginning? Is he still getting these visions? Are they coming to him on a regular
Yes,
basis?
he's starting to receive a variety of revelations from angels, or from Allah by way of angels. Um,
Right.
he's receiving words about how he should teach, and then also teaching from just his own personal experience and sort of general Arabian teachings and beliefs are intertwined into the religion, as well
Mm.
as Muhammad is quite familiar and close with a local group of Arabian Jews for quite some time, who live
Hmm.
near his family home, near his tribe, and he has seen them generally continue to thrive and prosper, and also upon encountering and interacting with several of these individuals, is very sort of awestruck by their um, eth- ethicalness, like their goodness, right? How
Hmm.
good of people they are, and how well their community is doing, and he really responds to a lot of their teachings, a lot of the teachings that of Judaism, of the Torah, uh,
Right. Right.
which is seen in the fact that in years to come, the one of the core tenets of belief in Islam is that you have to accept all three of the major monotheistic texts from the Middle East, which is being the Jewish Torah, the Christian Bible, and the Islamic Quran. That he has a great respect for Judaism, Christianity, and for in general other monotheist religions.
Right. Right. So he kind of builds upon the foundation of monotheism and expands upon that. Um, so I guess it just keeps growing at a steady pace. And how does he leverage this power? I mean, what does he do with this?
So it continues growing at a pretty steady pace. He's continuing to gain followers. At a certain point over time, they start to number in the several of thousands within the city of Mecca, where he lives, where is
Hmm.
sort of the family home of his family. Um, at a certain point, it is starting to become so popular, and within Islam, they also preach. They took on the general Jewish belief in iconoclasm, so sort of that there should not be graven images of gods. There should not be idols of gods. That there, you should basically you should not make statues in the shapes of gods. And
Right.
Mecca was filled with shrines that were filled with idols. They were a
Right.
very idolatrous people
Right.
in Mecca, And when he starts preaching this sort of generally Jewish belief of iconoclasm, that these idols and shrines should be destroyed, and when this religion really starts to gain some traction, gain some followers, the sort of politicians in charge of Mecca start to see it as a threat, and they they plan to remove Muhammad and his community from Mecca, and so they come to his home, to his sort of stately home that he lives on,
Right.
and they besiege it with soldiers. They come up there with an army, and they say, "Get out of our city, take your false faith," or sorry, they tell him to get out of the city. He refuses. Then they say, "Okay, well, we're only going to let you live if you proclaim that there is not just one God, Allah, as you have been proclaiming, but there is Allah and these other three goddesses who were the chief among the patron gods and goddesses of Mecca. These are kind of the top dog goddesses there." And they say, "Okay, you don't want to leave. We're going to kill you all unless you proclaim that basically you go back on the very core foundation tenet of Islam, which is the oneness of Allah."
Right.
You just say, "No, Allah is not the only God. He is only one among several other gods," which is completely against the religion. And ultimately, he communes with Allah and comes to the decision that it is worthy to lie in this circumstance, to make the false proclamation that yes, these other three goddesses are real, so that he and his community be allowed to flee Mecca. And so he does admit, okay, yes, there is Allah and these other three goddesses, and they allow him then, under the traditional Arabic rite of escape or rite of fleeing. I can't remember the exact wording, but basically they have a very old tradition of, if you surrender, you are allowed a certain number of days to flee before any violence will be brought to you. And so they are allowed to flee the city of Mecca, and they flee to what is basically sort of like the next state over, next province over, over into the city of Medina,
Right.
where they are welcome and allowed to stay. And then once he gets there, upon his arrival, Muhammad proves his value by, Medina is caught in a civil war when he arrives between local nobility, and he arrives and he negotiates a peace treaty between the local nobles who are engaged in a civil war, and manages to save the entire city. And so this is how he first sort of establishes himself in Medina, is right when he arrives. He saves many people from death, and many of the local people immediately are charmed by him and by his religion. And he's arrived already with many followers and clearly with a level of clout.
Right. And now he's built his platform. He's got his platform he needs to truly amplify his message.
Right. And so in Medina, over a handful of years, he continually builds his religious community. He continues to prove himself an able politician, and he manages to really work that system and find himself effectively as the ruler of Medina within a few years.